a hard-to-read fantasy novel from a writer's writer. A book that every time I read about it, which is a lot, it always came with a disclaimer that this is going to be a hard read. So today on the video, I am going to refer to my notes a lot and try to string together more coherent thoughts than usual and with a rambling tone of talking about Gene Wolfe's The Shadow of the Torture, the first book in the Book of the New Sun. So hello, my name is Zach, and on this channel I mostly review science fiction and fantasy novels, but I also delve into everything else such as comics, manga, personal development, and a little of everything in between. But yes, my bread and butter, my favorites are fantasy and sci-fi, and this book came from the constant recommendations and hints and drops from the devout fans of Book of the New Sun. I, of course, have to read the Reddit fantasy book list of give me your top 3 books you've ever read, books that you couldn't put down, books that you still think about. And one constant between all the other books that you hear a lot, like Red Rising or Tolkien or First Law Trilogy, but here and there is a book that I hadn't heard about back in the past, even though this was written a long time ago, actually, is Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun. So intrigued, I read up about it and I hear these thoughts and anecdotes on Reddit, and I had to try it myself. So a bit of a disclaimer, I read this in audiobook format, and I also read that, yes, you should read it in print because it's a book that you really need to take your time. So with that said, going into it and knowing this is going to be a hard book, that's what everyone says, I sort of intentionally took it slower than usual. I tried to really slow down my listening and only listen to this book when I could fully focus on it. So a lot of times I'll read books or listen to books when I'm taking a walk, at lunch, after dinner, or on the commute. And yes, even on the commute sometimes when I'm riding my bicycle commuting, and there's like traffic and things you have to pay attention to. And sometimes my mind, of course, will drift for my personal safety to the world around me. But with this book, I really tried to focus and not let my mind wander when I'm listening to audiobooks. And even when you're reading, you do that. You're looking at the words on the page, but then you'll hear something that'll spur a thought that your mind will sort of go, follow that thread while you're kind of scanning it. So you're reading, but you're not reading. And this definitely happens with audiobooks. You'll be walking and you're just hearing and processing the audio, but then your mind sort of wanders the other direction on a thought while the audio is still playing. So sometimes, you just zone out a bit, and it is a conscious effort. It's a skill to work on that I am constantly working on to bring my mind back to just fully listening and engaged with the narrator of what's happening, where the book is, what the plot is, what are the subtext. And this was a book that was really totally on display. So yes, I totally understand what people are saying now that I've read this, that yes, you need to pay attention. And I went into this with the chapter guide. So Michael Andre Drusi, there's a book called the Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun, a chapter guide, and it's a companion book. And in that book, he describes it as this is the book you should read as if we were reading the novels together. So the author, they cover all of the Book of the New Sun and the later books in the series. And so each chapter is a chapter to chapter really deconstruction, and he references honestly literary works and kind of serious discussions on Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, The Shadow of the Torture, where there's just so much that I definitely didn't pick up, and I don't think I would have picked up reading it either. So it's one of those things that I do highly recommend reading a companion book. And the other thing I did was, as I read this, I also did what I normally do with a lot of fantasy books, is I kind of read along with ChatGPT as my reading companion, where I will prompt. I have a ChatGPT prompt where I ask it, don't give me spoilers, but be a reading companion to help me fill in the gaps, place things where they are. And it does honestly a really good job of not spoiling it. Like ChatGPT will often ask you, like, do you want me to tell you a summary of the next thing? And I sometimes I just want, like, no, just catch me up to where I am. What are these people doing? And it allows me to, like this video, and that's why I make these videos, talk to somebody about the books to kind of, just get my thoughts and out there. And sometimes it really helps to process a book yourself when you can talk to somebody else about it, or when you have to think about it, like for a review. It forces me to think through the book another time and kind of put it in a context. And as I chat with large language model, chat with AI about it, it helps me just really synthesize my thoughts, where I can kind of ask it just questions like I would ask a person, like, hey, what is Severian doing here? Why is that? What is going on with these characters? And ChatGPT does a pretty good job of course, mimicking human interaction, because it's just an AI, but it really helped me as a reading companion and a buddy in this book, even with the chapter guide. So the chapter guide really delved into a lot of things I definitely missed. So a lot of the names in the book are references to other works of literature, like, oh yeah, this name is a reference to this book that I have never heard of. So Gene Wolfe is definitely a writer's writer, because the books he references are, they're not your normal sci-fi. These aren't references to Tolkien. These are references to like high literature books that I would totally haven't read, would not understand the reference at all. And then ChatGPT and the chapter guide really helped also just fill in the things I didn't understand about the story. So it was a book that I went into it really just getting lost in the journey and just trying to figure out what the heck was going on. So that's just putting just the context. So that's the context of going into this review, and the context I had of reading Shadow of the Torture. So as you probably know, if you've gotten this far already, the plot of the book is we follow Severian, who is our apprentice torturer in this world, Earth, with a U. So it's Earth, like obviously you're referencing Earth. And that's the thing I absolutely loved, is that this is Earth as Earth, reborn as Earth. So it's in a galaxy far, far away. So kind of like Star Wars, it possibly occurs in the far future where humanity is kind of like reverted to the past. That is kind of the vibe I was getting with Shadow of the Torture, that this is kind of that Star Wars-esque. It's so far into the future that it's Earth, but it's almost an unrecognizable Earth. So this is the coolest part for me, was there's references to buildings and things and objects in the world that Severian inhabits. Like, he's a torturer in a guild, so you can kind of understand what his job is. But as he goes through his world, which is kind of reverted to your stereotypical medieval fantasy, fantasy world, where it's lords and apprentices, and there's guilds, and they're the torturers guilds, and there's other guilds like the watch, like a police force kind of guild, and you can kind of make the similarities so it's familiar, but it's different because it's also familiar that it's our world, that there's references to like spaceships and science fiction elements. And that is something I really didn't expect, that it's actually a science fiction novel and a fantasy novel. So it's fantasy in the sense that, yes, there's fantastical elements and there's things going on that are not part of our world, but it's also science fiction, because in the sense of science fiction of like spaceships and aliens, which are present in the book. It's crazy. It's not like hard science, like like a Andy Weir novel like Project Hail Mary or The Martian. They're not, at least not yet. He's not puzzling out like equations and formulas to engineer his way off of Mars. No, this is still a story about a torturer and his sword and this journey he's going on. So it's a very fantasy-esque storyline, but with science fiction elements, because yes, there's spaceships and there's aliens and there's like augmented humans and stuff that you would find in a typical science fiction novel, because just the world is so rich, and it's too rich. It's because there's so much going on that yeah, it's just I wanted to know so much more about the world. So it was super interesting. This is what I really loved, was this world building, that it's our world, but not our world. It's in the future. You're given like hints of where they might be and what might be happening, and then you're in your mind putting it together that, okay, I think this is sort of related to something on Earth and like something that I have a frame of reference for, but again, this is maybe thousands, millions of years in the future, so it's an abstract concept of what really is going on. So, and you're never really explained of what it even is. Like there's hints, and the deconstructions sort of hint at what's going on as well, but at least so far, Gene Wolfe is not really explaining anything. You're just kind of on this journey with Severian, on his quests and journeys from scene to scene in the novel. And that is what it was. I think I don't know if I put this as a negative or a positive, was the structure of the story. So it's not really negative in the sense that it was bad, it's just difficult. So the plot and the structure, it's not like a typical journey of like a Lord of the Rings journey to destroy the ring. It's very straightforward. Or of course, one of my other favorites, Stormlight Archive. It's not like that long-winded narrative arc. The plot is set up in the sense that this is Severian retelling his past. But then I think I also read somewhere that this is actually like a translation of Severian's diary. So it's not only Severian's, biography that he's writing about himself, like his journal, but then it's a translation of that. So it's even more unreliable and disconnected of what the story is going on. So that's what was jarring for me a bit. And it sort of kept me on my toes and really kind of clashed in my mind, because sometimes a scene will end and the next scene will come, and there wasn't really like a thread between of like, why are we here now? And this is why I referenced a lot to ChatGPT, like, weren't we just doing something else? Wasn't Severian just in a duel? What happened at the duel? And why is the next scene, why are we here? What happened in between? And that's either good or bad, because you're left as the reader to fill in what has happened and trying to make sense of where we just were. So sometimes it's very, like jarring, and I was lost sometimes. And I think it's obviously intentional, is that you're supposed to be, really kind of not understanding it and just sort of going with the flow, and then filling in your own mind of what could have happened. Why are we here? But so that's good if you like kind of those, really forcing you to think, but you won't like it if you're easily pulled out of the story, because I could see someone easily getting confused and frustrated, because a lot of times you really have no idea what the heck is going on, because the story jumps around a bit, and you have to keep reminding yourself that yes, this is a retelling of Severian's story. It's an unreliable narrator. It's in this weird far future world where the characters in the world find this commonplace, but we as outside readers are totally lost, but we're given hints and threads of how this is probably related to our world, but not for sure. So it's all these things come together that make it feel like a dreamlike, like fever dream sometimes, of following Severian on this quest as he meets these eccentric characters. All the characters are so crazy, and like in a good way. It's just like, everyone has such a rich personality. I loved all the characters we met. Everyone was very interesting, and I wanted to learn like what the heck was happening in this weird wastelands far future world. It was just crazy. It was very dense, and the most parallel I could see in a book that I absolutely loved, and I think that's why I love this, is Neil Stephenson's Anthem, which is also more on the sci-fi side than the fantasy side, but of course I think it also would qualify as a science fiction fantasy, because it blends elements of a lot of technology and science going on, but also fantasy, because it's just fantastical. And it's also, Anthem takes place in this very similar far future world where we have our character who's like a monk in an order, but it's in this weird world with spaceships also, and a lot of things going on so it's like a retro futuristic world that we as readers are only given glimpses of what's really going on, and a lot of, again, made up words in Anthem, which we also see here in Shadow of the Torture. So because Shadow of the Torture came first, I have to think that Stevenson was inspired by Gene Wolfe, because it's very similar feeling. Even though, of course, Anthem is a newer novel and has some great ideas. I absolutely loved Anthem. I thought it was very interesting, and all the characters. Yeah, it was love the characters. Erasmus, Raz, lovable characters. But I think that's why I love Shadow of the Torture so much. It's a novel that had me thinking the entire time. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about Anthem. So those novels that really kind of get your brain working in a good way as you try and puzzle out what the heck is going on. Those are the novels that really stick with me, and I see why now it comes up in these Reddit threads and these recommendations, because it's a novel that it invites rereading. I'm sure a second read would do me wonders already. I haven't read the rest of the series, but all the things I know are going to be connected and foreshadowed, and things that are happening now are going to be paid off later in the series, at least I've heard. So I'm trying to read it and process it, but I know I almost already want to reread the first one, because even reading the chapter guide, I know I missed things and having to fill in the blanks. So interesting, really enjoyed it. I think that if you like these mysterious novels that really get you thinking, so like a writer's writer, you will enjoy this. If you want action, there's only one, I think, action scene in the entire novel, and it's not even that good by, I guess, action standards. There's one duel in the novel, so this is by no means a action fantasy, and I thought that's what I was looking for in my reading lately. I was like, I need something more action oriented. I think I need to get out of, not a rut, I would say, but just change things up. But reading this, I realized it's not that I need to change things up. As far as like action versus politics, what I needed was, I think the mental dexterity to understand books that maybe were a little bit slower, that not much is going on. Look at books like The Curse of Chalion, which was also frequently recommended, but just didn't hit for me. Whereas this one also has similar pacing, where it's kind of slow, that there's not big action scenes that happen from scene to scene, but a lot happens, almost too much happens, and it's just so mysterious. Whereas Curse of Chalion, it sounds like it's a mystery and a murder sort of ish mystery, The Curse of Chalion, but it wasn't I didn't really puzzle things out. But Shadow of the Torture, I'm just thinking about the world, the characters, what it all means, what the different scenes mean, and how I'm supposed to interpret that, what was going on, where is he going next at the end of the novel. Severian is just starting his journey. This is just the beginning. Who he's going with his companions and these characters that he met. It's just so much to think about, and I just can't wait. So I highly, highly recommend Shadow of the Torture. I am a new convert to Gene Wolfe, to this. He's definitely one of my new favorite authors. I think it was great writing. And the only, I think, regret of reading this was because I read an audiobook. So Amazon was having one of those promotions that if you signed up for Amazon Music, you got a free Audible book every month. And silly me, I chose Shadow of the Torture as my monthly credit through the free Amazon trial. So it was great to have a free book for 4 months until you cancel the trial. So, 4 free books from Audible, amazing. But I think the kicker is you don't actually get to keep the book, so I don't get to go back to it. So while it was a good choice to read as my book of the month for the free trial on Amazon, I said it's a book that already invites me to reread. So I think this will be a book that will need a credit down the road from my actual Audible credit count because it's just that good. I know I'm going to reread it, and it's short, so that's a positive. It's only about 12 hours an audiobook, so you can kind of do the math for how long that would be for a regular book. Not too long. It goes quick, but again, I slowed down, and it still went quick because this is just part of a larger story. There's the whole rest of the Book of the New Sun, and then I think there's 2 or 3 other Earth of the New Sun. The Long Sun, Short Sun. There's a couple other in this series. So I'm excited that this is just the beginning of the Book of the New Sun and Gene Wolfe's journey with this whole world, which I am dying to learn more about and return to as soon as the next book up. So waiting for my next month of Amazon Music promotion for the next book I get from Audible. So thanks for watching. Highly recommend Shadow of the Torture, Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. And have a great day, and please read it and leave your thoughts about Book of the New Sun. So thanks for watching.